Hello everyone, it's Joel Davis with Home Care Access. I am back in the great state of Ohio. I'm waiting to meet with my business partners, Marty and Jeanne. Many of you know them. You may have met them at one of our live events, or you're working with them doing one-on-one training. Marty and Jeanne, owners of Community Caregivers for 20 plus years now. And like I said, my business partners with Home Care Access. Now that we have completed our 120-day introductory period, I wanted to come back to Ohio, sit down, meet with them, talk about some of their experiences in working with many of you from around the country. As you know, home care industry is a growing opportunity. The elderly population is continuing to grow and exponentially multiply, but there are a lot of variables. Home care is different in every state. It can vary by county, and there are no better experts in the industry that I know of than Marty and Jeanne. So I am pleased to have partnered with them. So while we wait for them to finish up a meeting with some of their staff, I look forward to sitting down with them and literally asking them, what have you learned over the last 120 days in working with some of you over the last 120 days, which is going to benefit those of you who we're going to work with in the near future. So stay tuned, watch this entire video, and let's learn from the experts. So, thanks so much for having me back. We have much to do and discuss. A lot of things have happened over the last 120 days in working with client providers around the country. But first and foremost, before we get started, I want you at breakfast, when we were talking about war stories, I want you to retell word for word the story this morning where you guys were talking about when you were first starting your home care business and you're busy and you're going in the other room to answer calls. I want you to I know you weren't prepared to do this, but I want you to reiterate that story, because there's someone watching this who they're not sure they could do it, they're not sure they could start their business, or they have an existing job, they have another business. As you're well aware of, some of our client providers we're working with, they already have other businesses. So, but I love the creativity of you just find a way to get it done. You find a way to get it done. So who's going to start? I want you to start telling me that story, because that was a very good story.
She can tell you the good ones. Go ahead.
In the beginning, when we first started, Marty had a full-time job, and he worked about an hour from where our home was. So that was a commitment that he had. He was the breadwinner, and I was working full-time at the hospital. I carried the benefits, and it was a good job, and that's all I ever knew. So I was very secure in that. And then we decided to start our home care business. And in that, it started to grow, slow but sure. And I'm ducking into the locker room on the floors that I'm working, trying to answer the cell phone and be secretive and not get fired. And then eventually we had a discussion saying, you know, if this is going to work, something has to give.
If the business, if Community Caregivers is going to
fly. Somebody has to give.
So how long of a period of time were you guys doing this balancing act of you working full time, you ducking and dodging in the locker room at the hospital, taking phone calls?
I got to tell you, we bought a franchise first.
Right.
So we had at least somebody holding our hand. We didn't know anything, governments and so forth. And well, we were sitting in the office, which was a 10 by 10. And now we just sat there and said, now what happens? But
see, the reason why I appreciated that story is because it's like my first business was a medical transportation business, and literally, you know, when you're the dispatcher, the driver, you're doing the intake, and you're meeting with people, and you're transporting patients, and you know, so when you hear other people, it makes you appreciate.
Oh yeah.
You just find a way.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Nothing is ever going to be perfect.
Jeanne was our first caregiver, and we got a 24/7. She's working the business from a client's house. I mean, it's just a ton to do.
Because your background is an LPN.
Nursing. So you just do what you have to do to get by.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's the bottom
So how
line.
long were you guys doing this for before you, I know you had the franchise, you already bought into it, put up a lot of money. We talked about that in previous videos, so a lot of our viewers know that. But how long were you guys doing this balancing act before? Was it you that left first, or you?
I did, yeah.
And how long were you doing that balancing act before you left?
I bumped into about my 4th month, I'd say.
So, I mean, 4 months is a long time, but it's pretty short. I mean,
But that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You can't afford to work
Yeah.
anymore.
So 4 months is a long time when you're ducking and dodging and bouncing in the locker rooms to take calls. But when you look at it overall, it's not a long time.
No.
So your business was picking up pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
Good. So speaking of which, before I came prepared, I got some good questions I want to ask you because obviously in working with different client providers, you guys are learning a lot too. Things are different all over the country. But before we dive into that stuff, let's talk about the industry itself. So it was a few months ago since I was out here last time. Obviously we talk all the time. But give me your take on the industry, home care industry. Has anything changed? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? Especially, coming from with medical transportation being my bread and butter, working with client providers around the country, I got a macro perspective, and you guys are seeing that as you're working with different people around the country. What are you seeing, feeling, touching, hearing?
The number one obvious is the pandemic. We've been doing this over 20 years. Anything before pandemic, throw it out the window. The world's changed, and laws and labor shortage, and I mean everything has changed. So you just have to kind of roll with it and find an answer to be successful. But the supply and demand after the pandemic, people are pulling mom and dad away from nursing homes. So you got this huge upswing in demand, but you have a caregiver shortage, or you have a labor shortage. It's not just caregivers.
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act.
Everyone's feeling the labor issue.
But it's totally different than when we started.
Yeah. We could be very select on who we hired, actually. You know, you had...
You're talking about before the pandemic?
No, we put a Craigslist ad. We didn't worry about caregivers. We were running sky high. But you got to be...
Tell me about relationships, because things are obviously post-COVID. Things have changed with nursing facilities, rehab, assisted living, and you were talking about how they're starting to partner more and more with agencies.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Like Marty said, due to the pandemic and so many people being fearful to work in a nursing home, they lost a lot of their staff. And then the creation of you have to be mandatory vaccine, they lost a lot of their staff. So now they're looking at ways to fill those holes. They have so many. And so they're looking to partner with home care agencies to see if they can staff their holes that they have in their facilities. They have.
So are you seeing and experiencing this? Because I wouldn't have predicted that. So I would argue that's rather unique that you have literal nursing facilities reaching out to and partnering with home care agencies. I honestly wouldn't have predicted that. So with that being said, are you experiencing that in your home care agency, community caregivers? And are you also seeing it with some of the client providers you're working with?
Yes, all across the board. Everyone is looking, to partner.
If you remember, I sent you an article where I forget the percentage of nurses because they're just so strung out, they're quitting. People need healthcare workers, and they can't, I mean, if you're talking money, the margin's huge when you partner up versus single. It's just another opportunity out there.
Like I said, when you were telling me about that dynamic, I wouldn't have predicted that. That's why it intrigued me so much. What about the labor issue itself? Obviously, labor has been a hot topic issue for everybody, every industry. But, when we were talking, you were saying how things are starting to slowly turn and shift.
Can I brag a little bit about what we've done?
Sure.
We've had people that have been with us for 20 years. Retention's huge on that. And so we have not been hurt as bad as a lot of the people that are out there. So you better do retention first, but then you better be strategically proactive in getting
But you said that some people were actually coming back to you
Yeah,
now that
people-
they're not getting as paid as much as stay at home.
Yeah, that, or they chose to stay out for a while because of the pandemic, and now they're pretty comfortable with what's happening, and they're saying, do you mind if I hire back?
we think this is the pivotal time. Again, the $600 a month is gone, the child care, some of that's gone, so people need to pay their bills. So
So do you have any people that, I mean, when they contact you, what are they saying?
They're just calling and saying, hey.
So they gotta be an easy rehire, if you will,
Oh,
because obviously
so
they got
easy.
experience.
Yeah. It's a very quick hire. You can,
Let me ask you this, if you have, and again, these are important topics, we're talking about the industry itself. So you have things changing with nursing homes, reaching out to agencies, trying to form strategic partnerships, which is good. I mean, again, I never would have thought or predicted that one. You got labor issues that hopefully they're in the process of being resolved as policies change, things like that. That's why I always say politics directly affects policy, which directly affects your business.
all day long.
But with that being said, tell me about last time I was out here, we were talking about how just in your county alone, there is a surplus, a waiting list of over 500 people waiting for service. So you had excess demand and not enough capacity. Is that starting to change a little bit?
yeah, the demand is still there. It's
If
as
not
high.
more
Yeah,
than before.
yeah, because like Marty said, a lot of people were brought home from the nursing home, so that adds to that pool of people that need help. So it's become greater. And we're starting to see employees wanting to return to the field, and we're starting to get more phone calls about people wanting to apply. So it is starting to
It
loosen
feels
back
like
up
it's
again.
turning,
Yeah,
it's
you
turning
can
the
feel
corner
it.
right now.
Turning, when you say turning, you turning for the benefit of the business owners?
For the business owner,
Yes.
I think we're at the very bottom of the labor shortage, and every month I think what you're gonna see is an increase.
So you see, you see a good trajectory for
Oh my God, I think we're sitting at the
Definitely.
perfect time right now,
Good.
with that supply being so, or the demand being so high, it's a win-win.
What about like all the mandates? You touched on that a few minutes ago. What about the mandate issue? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? How has it affected you? And now, again, policy affects your business. Now that 1 minute there's a mandate, then the judge intervenes, no
Yeah.
mandate. What do you see and feel and touching with
It was a
that?
bit of a panic situation because with the mandates, if they weren't opting for the vaccine, there's penalties that you just can't afford. They were massive. So they're basically
$14,000
forcing
a
it. Yeah, 14,000.
person.
And now that they've lifted the mandate, that's what we're seeing is like, oh, that's a positive because people have the option now to either, be vaccinated or not.
Bottom line, the mandate isn't good for business.
It is not good for
For any business, let
I
alone
agree.
healthcare.
I agree. I totally agree. Well, interesting updates. Good stuff. So, are you ready to dive into some questions?
Sure.
One-on-one coaching. You've been working with a number of people around the country. What do you think?
Oh, they're all the same. They're all the same. Jeanne has a better handle on this as far as the extremes.
So you guys have been owners of community caregivers over 20 years here in Ohio, doing well. Obviously, you know your system. Now that we've been working with people all over the country, tell me about some of the variations that you see by state, by county regarding policies, regarding applications, because you guys are helping our client providers with applications, process, paperwork, things like that. Tell me about some of the variations that you're seeing.
It's totally different from our experience for sure. When you go into another state, everything is completely different. So there's regulations that are completely different. There's policies that you have to have in place that are different. There's applications that are totally different. Everything is different. So it's just acclimating and researching.
So how much is Ohio different from, let's say, Texas being different from Georgia being different from Florida, from California to Washington? Because obviously we got client providers all over the place now.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing?
Different in every aspect. I mean, some require licensing and some don't. So like Ohio's a non-licensed state. Other states have licensing. Go ahead, Marty.
You would think every government contract would be the same. It's no problem. Every contract for every state. So you might have a government in Ohio contract is totally different. And I don't know if you want to get into this now, but as you do the research, most of it is antiquated. So if you haven't,
What do you mean by the research is antiquated?
if you're looking for the
information?
rules and regulations, for each state. If you're going back past 2 years, you have old information.
So, just coming in right now, is any of that like COVID related or something? Or?
All of it, and I don't want to say all of it, but again, I don't want to stretch
They
it too
had to
much.
amend policies to acclimate to include COVID.
That's interesting.
Or
That's
change.
interesting. So you're saying that policies need to be different for different providers depending on location, depending on different contracts they may have. There's no one size fits all.
No.
There
never.
might be 20 different variables that you would have to know to figure out where you sit with the.
So most states have some type of application process. Some have
Yes.
next to no regulation, some have more regulation. Would you say hard, easy, what? How would you
I
classify it?
I think some are easier than others, and I think, like Marty said, the problem is if you're into research, which is a lot of what we're doing for our people, you hit a dead end because a lot of that research is old and they haven't pulled it from the market on the internet. So we're looking at old research. So you have to know where to look. You have to know where to find your current information.
So you were talking to me at breakfast, you were talking about when you're calling a lot of these government agencies to get current information. Tell me about, I mean, look, because I'm sure anybody watching this knows that when you call one government, I always say, the left hand doesn't always know what the right hand is doing. You can work side by side and you don't even know what the policies are.
We've dealt with government contracts for 20 years, and I don't want to be negative. Jeanne's going, how do these guys have a job?
Yeah.
So we would get totally different answers from totally different departments.
It's a bit of a rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole. We've done better, always looking for our own info than, making a phone call. They just, A, they're government workers, and B,
A lot of them are there from 9 to 5.
they're not there
Plus the
because they have a
time,
passion to help out the
Exactly.
home care industry. And I hate to be negative, but they were of zero help, I should say, or 1%. I'm talking about if you wanted to try to do this on your own, and you think, well, I'll just call some of these agencies, not agencies, but departments.
So I see in the office in there, you got stacks and stacks of documents and papers, and I see that you've been organizing them and preparing them accordingly. Over the last 120 days and working with these different people around the country, I mean, your education curve, your documentation, I mean, has been like
Oh, yeah.
off the charts.
As Marty and I started this at day one and then ended, I think we had stacks this, and then we dwindled it down to what we really needed and have a folder now for each client. So it's huge, the research that has to go into it to get the answers that we need, and then you dwindle it down.
We literally have done research that was totally wrong and wasted maybe 2 weeks.
What type of feedback are you getting directly from individual client providers? I mean, look, let's not get it twisted. You're putting a lot of effort, a lot of time into helping them with the application, the research process, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, researching the different contracts. I want to talk about those in a second here, but what type of feedback are you getting from the clients?
The clients are positive because they are mostly people who are running other businesses, and they're grateful that we're taking on this role. They just don't have the time. So
And that right
It's
there is the key, the time. Time is money, money is time. I mean, you gotta be efficient. Time is my big thing for sure. So, what about, and don't let me forget about contracts, what would you say you got different? Like everybody's different. There's no two paths are the same. Some people, this might be their first business. Some people, this might be their third business. They may already have an existing business. Short on time, need you guys to do a lot of the legwork for them. Tell me about some of the different client providers, whether it be their temperament, their approach, the good, the bad, the indifferent. What do they need to come and be successful in working with Home Care Access?
I think that when we are doing that kind of legwork and we give an assignment to a client, they just have to have.
And what do you
follow
mean
through.
by an assignment?
Maybe there's an educational piece that they need to complete. Maybe there's an alteration to like a legal document that they already have and it needs tweaked. We need them to act quickly. the less delays the better. We're already
Sure,
meeting
sure.
delays with research, so if we're delayed by the client and their responses, that's not a good thing either. We just need everybody to be on the same page and keep moving forward.
What about you guys? So when you're doing, tell me, let me think of how I would ask this. What type of delays would you get when you're trying to complete an application process? You reach out to the provider, they get you the information. Do you experience any type of delays from that person who's with the government agency or the processing for the application or the
It's a
contract?
priority. You have to have the NPI correct. You have to have this correct. So every time that you stall, you're pushing back your start date.
But are you finding a lot of delays or?
From who we're submitting to.
Yeah.
No, only if there's been inadequate information submitted. So as long as everything is lined up and submitted correctly,
Mhm.
it's gonna go through the process. And they tend to give you a timeline of how long they're gonna take to process that application.
So be honest, absolutely honest with me. Are there any client providers who are a pain in the butt?
Honest? They're not a pain in the butt, but it's ease of transition of
I
getting
mean, look, I work with a
information.
lot of client providers. I'm not gonna lie. Some people are just awesome to work with. Other people, I tell people, when I'm working with you one-on-one, you paid me good money. Let me help you.
Mhm.
But I'm not gonna chase you down. It's like, hey, I'm gonna remind you this and that. But if I gotta keep hounding you to do
Yes.
something, I mean, I can't help you if you don't want to be helped.
Yeah, we've had it both ways. We've had people who are Johnny on it and they're just ready to go and they get you everything. Within 10 minutes, I have a response to an email. It's amazing. And then other people, I'm sending 3 and 4 and saying, hey, I need this information like today.
What about email correspondence versus phone call? How accessible have you guys been? The client providers, what do more emails, more phone calls?
Emails seem to be the best, especially like I said, if they're already involved in a business, they have more time to email than they do to sit on a phone call.
They don't have time for the phone call.
But we stay in
Email
touch with
is
them.
the best. But the difference is me and Jeanne know to write that, we know which questions to ask. So if somebody's not important, you might ask this question, but it didn't help out. If you need the NPI, we'll tell you exactly what the law is, how you get it. Knowledge is king.
No question. No question. What about, I want to circle back to manuals.
Mhm.
Because manuals are important, obviously. And again, this is why I'm going to, how would I say this and be somewhat delicate for other people who are in position to...
Don't be delicate. Tell it like it is.
The one I cannot stand, if it's a pet peeve of mine, it's the expert marketing gurus, the one size fits all, pay this much money, you get the manual, this and that. Look, you know it, I know it, but someone watching this video, I need you to clearly articulate the importance of why you do not want one size fits all, and the importance of having customized manuals and why they're so critical for different contracts and applications.
The average policy and procedure is like 300, 400 pages. And so let's say that you're going after one contract, and this whole policy and procedure is about that one. You might as well throw it out. It's like a business plan. We paid, I don't know how much for a business plan. I think we showed it off, but we never used it. You don't need a business plan.
Let me ask you this. It's funny you say that because that's actually a question I was going to ask you because I get that a lot, both when I'm working with people in home care and NEMT. They'll say, "What's the difference between the manual and a business plan?" Now,
The short answer?
Yeah.
A policy and procedure will make you money. Business plan isn't worth crap.
Totally agree. The business plans are important, but you're never gonna follow them. They're important. I tell people they're important as like a ticket to get through the toll. If you're gonna go get financing, if you have to show it to a banker or something, you gotta have the business plan. But what I do tell people is that the actual formulation process of putting a business plan together, doing the research, that is important. That's critical because in doing your research, doing your own investigation throughout your community, a lot of times you uncover new opportunity.
Yeah.
The shame of it is, the internet. You can.
Totally
I can
agree.
get your policy and procedure for $95.
Don't get me started on that
No,
business in a
I'm
box
just-
type stuff.
It's
I
not even
see
in a
it every
box.
day.
It's cheaper if they don't get the
Oh
box.
my
but yeah.
goodness. Some of the stuff that people come up with the one size fits all, plug in the numbers, spit them out.
But policy and
Right.
procedure, you can run your company with that. I literally is the dictionary. What happens with this policy? What happens there? So it's night and day as far
Totally
as the
agree.
business plan. But policy and procedure, excuse me, should be geared towards your strategy and your goals. Not just there's no way that the guy in Ohio could have the same policy and procedure in Texas or New York.
Tell me why the policies and procedures in your manuals have to be regularly updated. So someone trying to sell you the one size fits all from 6 months ago is antiquated right now.
Sure.
Especially if you're adding more contracts, talk about the potential liability and contract changes and why they need to be different.
Well, there's constant changes. It's always in motion. It's like its own living, breathing machine. So unless you make those changes to it, you're all of a sudden you find yourself out of compliance. You have an auditor come in, and then they say, well, you don't have this in place. You have to know your regulations, and every state is different.
And what happens if you have a number of dings?
Citations, they give you so much time to correct it, and
Or-
if you don't correct it,
You
you're out
lose
of
your
business. Or they fine you drastically.
That's why, it's not just a piece of paper to look fancy.
Out of curiosity, have you been surprised at how some states have next to no policy and some have you uncovered like, all right, man, this is ridiculous. They're getting a little too strict on this. Have you noticed any of that?
Go ahead.
There's some states that you can put your shingle out tomorrow and you can be home care or private business, whatever. And there's some states, I won't mention, Texas, man, is it tough. The nice thing about it is it's barriers to entry.
Yeah,
If the
yeah, that's
average
true.
Joe is going to do this,
That's true.
he's gonna run and
Very
cry.
true.
So there is a positive to that,
Very
but
true.
it's night and day, and I don't wanna keep on stressing this, but, 50 states, 50 rules, 50 contracts, 50 everything.
What about, here's interesting, what about terminology? How much, because man, terminology, I've told this people.
That's the funny
But
part.
let me get your take on the difference between terminology.
I'll just say that and then you come in. Every state has its definition page. You would think they'd be the same. It's like, what industry are they talking about? Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, just taxonomy codes, like Marty was saying, just to say that word alone, he struggles with it. But finding taxonomy codes for people in every different state, and they're different. They should be the same, but they're not.
So
Let me
go ahead.
let me give you an example. So let's say that this taxonomy code is wrong, okay? You might take 6 months to get it right. 6 months of time that you could be learning, that you could be making money. I mean, it's very important to be actual and factual.
So with all of these details, difference in terminology, difference in manuals, difference in policies and applications and contracts, you're scaring somebody who's watching this. They don't want to start their own home care agency. We're scaring them.
That's what we're for.
That's pretty slick. I like that. You sound like a professional saleswoman.
No, again, we've been there, done that, and everything I do in business is return on investment. It's such a small investment for what you're giving up if you try it on your own. Time, money, accuracy.
So of the client providers that we've been working with so far over these last 120 days, how many of them are like, man, thanks, you guys are saving me time.
I was
You
gonna
get
say-
time is money, money's time.
What'd she say? 1 million, I forget. We get the testimonies and ask them. And I forget what the one lady, it was just a great testimony. She has 3 businesses. She has no time to do this, so she has her administrator. Anyways, I didn't want to get too deep with the clients, but
So what about, so we're finished up 120 days. So some of these people that started with the DVDs, they're like, this is good stuff. I want to move forward. I want to work with these guys directly. You got to be, my clock says we're coming up on 120 days for some of these people. Does that mean you're just going to forget about them?
No.
we are not those types of people, and there's no guarantees. But I guarantee you, our job is to make you money. So
That's what I tell people. My goal is to put you in a position to make.
now, there's a lot of people that are saying
Go for
this,
green.
going, "Don't you care about the other? Isn't it your passion? Isn't yeah, we love the elderly. But if you're not making money, I've got 80 people that depend on me to make the right decisions and make the money. So it is about dollars.
In working with all these different providers now, you have a new appreciation for the variation around the country. What type of opportunities are you seeing? Because again, a lot of the client providers we're working with already have a business. Some may have an NEMT business. Some may have a different profession. You know, what in working with them, drilling down, learning more about the policies, procedures, getting contracts in their local area. Are you being surprised? Are you learning anything about new opportunities for them?
Let me give you an example as far as, and this is, I'm surprised everyone doesn't know that. So let's take the NEMT business, which we have, or had.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a home care agency and an NEMT, you can be under your umbrella and save thousands of dollars on your liability insurance. Nobody knows that. And every state's different, so I'm not guaranteeing each state.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could save $5,000, $6,000 on just your liability, and you have a new company, I mean, that's just one example.
I've said it perpetually, the easiest way to make money is to save money.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
It's
obviously.
economies of scale.
Exactly.
It's huge, but
What about, what are your thoughts? Any ideas, anything unique that you've seen, encountered, been surprised by, or?
No, I have not been too surprised by anything yet. I just, it's again, like you said, learning personalities and people that we're entertaining as clients and learning how they're reacting to what we're asking of them. You know, how much time do they have? How much are they willing to put in? But again, like Marty and I were saying, you do have to do a bit of time. You have to learn your industry. If you're in another business or this is your first one, you have to learn your business.
you can't pay for the knowledge for some of the stuff that we're
Well,
doing.
what about you? What type of feedback are you getting from our client providers regarding everything we've been providing? Not just the one-on-one that you guys have been doing, but what type of feedback have you been getting on the DVDs, the training material, the web development, stuff like that?
I hate to keep on bragging, but we've talked before in the videos. You know, they don't understand that I can't get enough caregivers. Oh, I can pay somebody, son or daughter, to take care of your parents. That's just one of like 50 tidbits. That's amazing.
Sure, I love that one. That's incredible. Incredible.
But I don't think, go ahead, as far as anything that you, I'm trying to think of something that you were stumped on or I was stumped on.
What about, what type of feedback are you getting from client providers regarding the overall growth trajectory and the opportunity of the industry itself?
I think they see it. They don't have we do not have to tell them. They see it, and they're business owners, so they see the potential. And like I said before, I think you're right at the perfect time.
That's interesting.
Because of the COVID and the labor shortage. Anyways, I'm a visual guy, so take that graph. I think you're at the very bottom. Meaning, let's get in now because the shortage is not going to be there forever. So a lot of these opportunities will go away in about 12 months.
Very good point. What do you think, sister? Any final thoughts?
No, I think we're doing great. It's been fun. It's been challenging, but it's fun. And I think that the people that we're working with really enjoy what we're doing for them. I think they appreciate it. So I think it's good.
It's going to sound real corny. I wish there was a Marty and Jeanne when we started. Oh my gosh. Would have saved me not 500,000, but close.
Well, people, thanks so much for having us back.
Love to have you down here.
Appreciate it. I know. Always appreciate it. So, for those of you watching, hope you gleaned some information from these two experts, my business partners, my partners in crime. Continue to stay tuned for more up-to-date and relevant information that's going to help you build, grow, and scale your home care agency. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that video, although brief in duration. I hope you found it to be high in content. There's some golden nuggets to glean from that. There's a lot of things we couldn't put on video. We talked a lot about many of you who Marty and Jeanne were working with one-on-one for 120 days. So a lot of things we couldn't put on video because obviously we don't want to disclose any pertinent information for many of our client providers. We're always dedicated to protecting your information. But for those of you who are serious about moving forward, retaining our help in building, growing, and scaling your own non-medical home care agency, I definitely encourage you to, as a minimum, just start with the DVDs. Study the DVDs, study them in detail. Let us know what questions you have. If you're serious, if you're like many of our client providers who this might be your first business, you're not exactly sure of what to do, you just like someone being able to help hold your hand, help you through the research, the application, the enrollment process. If you have an existing business, whatever that might be, maybe you're short on time, that is probably the biggest takeaway from working with Marty and Jeanne. They are going to save you time. For any of you familiar with my information, you know I stress time is money and money is time. We have to be efficient. We have to maximize our time. So if you're serious, like I say, start by, as a minimum, studying the DVDs. If you're serious thereafter, you want to move forward, you want to work with them, they're going to work with you for 120 days. Some people we already know we're going to work with long term. They're serious about retaining our services long term. Hey, we welcome the opportunity to work with you. Spend time on the website, learn as much as you can. Feel free to contact us with any questions. When you do, I'll see you at the top.